it's awesome to see from that standpoint. We can gain on initiatives like that purely because the software-centric nature of our entire world allows us to keep innovating with the hardware we have, with the investment we have, so we can prolong it.
Hi, and welcome back to the Teams Insider podcast. This week we have Dave Hatz, who is VP of Machine Intelligence at CTI. CTI are a large AV integrator and events company, and Dave takes us through his personal journey in the AV world and how he came to be working on Microsoft Teams rooms and in the Microsoft world, how our paths crossed, and also how AI is now impacting the AV world and where the AV integrator can add value in the AI conversation in Microsoft Teams rooms and beyond. Great conversation with Dave. Many thanks for him jumping on the pod. And also many thanks to Neat, who are the sponsor of this podcast. Really appreciate all their support of everything we're doing at Empowering Cloud. On with the show. Everybody, welcome back to the Teams Insider podcast. Been looking forward to this one for a while. Dave and I kind of brewed up the idea at one of the events. Was it Comsverse? I can't remember. It might have been.
Comsby Next.
Comsby Next. That was it. Yeah, in the States. Yeah. Yeah. So you may know of Dave from such fame as Prompt of the Week on the Selling Microsoft Teams show. I'm sure you've possibly seen him around in the community as well. But Dave, thanks for coming on the show.
No, I'm excited to be here. Looking forward to this chat as well.
Awesome. So for people who don't know you, can you give us a little bit of who you are, your current role, and then I'd love to dive into the history of how you and I ended up together in the same spot from different starting points.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so my name's Dave Hatz. I'm based out of the Chicago area in the U.S. Work for CTI, so large system integrator. Heavy focus in the U.S., but it does a lot of business internationally. And my role is to lead our AI practice. So my official title is VP Machine Intelligence, and so I lead a team of software developers and business analysts that are focused on software development, on incorporating AI, on building AI skills within our organizations, and then talking with about AI to our customers and helping them on their journeys.
And it's like a really progressive role, isn't it? Where we are today and bang on where things seem to be going. But let's take it back. Where do you come from? Because you're AV background, aren't you?
I really am. I came into the AV world right out of college. I had a traditional electrical engineering degree, and the one thing I knew for certain is that I didn't want to be a true engineer. I was good at math, good at science, but didn't want to sit in a cube, doing math formulas for my life. I was hands-on. And so I had a passion for live production, lights and sound and theater and that. Did an internship with Disney doing just that. All these things early on. And so I fell into an audio video integrator in the Chicago area and came into a role doing AV programming, sort of combining skills I had and, sort of a hunger, thirst for knowledge, and really came in as the only person doing this role. I didn't know what I was getting into at all. But, a few years down the road, I was, growing my skill. I was getting into AV design. So, because at, early 2000s, the programmer was really sort of at a glue spot of a lot of the complex systems that an integrator would put out there. Because, the word integration really was true because you were bringing disparate systems together, trying to, to make them work together. And so the programmer really got to see all those pieces.
Funny. I've never really thought of the history of that word. I've always just taken it to mean what I currently understand it to be, but that makes so much sense.
Yeah. And so my role grew, I naturally grew as I was just thrown the biggest challenge of the day. It would come to Dave, and it didn't matter if it was an engineering challenge or an actual software development challenge or configuring the equipment. I really got my hands in on a lot of cool things, really early on. And so it quickly grew my skills, and then, got to the point where all of a sudden there wasn't enough Dave to go around. So we hired some people and I became a manager just sort of through attrition in that. And, and really grew the first, 10, even 15 years of my career, just sort of, rinse and repeat, grow and get a new challenge and find a way to do it.
And then how did MTR come into your world, and then you end up in the Microsoft world as well?
Well, so I go back to a single project I had probably around 2010 or so, and it was a large Fortune 100 corporation, and they were very progressive. they were using, at the time, Cisco telepresence and some Cisco video endpoints to literally produce these corporate meetings. So, so by that, they would have their CFO in France. They'd have their CEO in the US. They might have another C-level executive in Asia Pac. And they would literally call 3 or 4 video endpoints into that call so that they could pull independent feeds of each participant. They'd put one participant full screen on each one, bring them into a broadcast system, and record it, put titles up and graphics and produce it. And so I was thrown the challenge of how can we automate this? Because we want to do more of these events every day, but we want to keep it simple for the operators. And so, over a course of over a year, I worked through the engineering design, the configuration, the software automation on it to bring to life this ability for, really a producer level talent to truly be a technical director in broadcast terms of these global video conferences.
Yeah.
And so it really, yes, I had, put the remote buttons for a Polycom endpoint at the time or a Cisco endpoint on a touch panel, but that's really what thrust me into really understanding the UC technology. And then right on the heels of that was when Link became, we started having Link room systems, turned into Skype room systems, turned into Teams room systems. And so again, it just sort of built upon that, sort of thrown into the trenches, grassroots. And, from that point on, it's been a part of what I've done, whether it's from the deployment side, the design side, or a little more recently, the management and software configuration side with Teams Admin Center, Pro Portal, and all that. So
that's so cool. And like you're clearly very and do bring it on, world's changing. Like I feel like that, like if I dare say, it's not characteristic of everybody in IT or AV. How did you see that? How was the impact of that kind of computer-based codecs and MTR into, I think, a world where there was a lot of emphasis, as you said, on the integrating, the coding, the proprietary? Well, from your point of view in the AV space, how did that look over the last 5, 6, 7 years?
Yeah, well, I mean, initially, obviously, there was reluctance. There was this idea, why is Microsoft trying to say all you need is this really simple solution when for the last 20 years, I've been doing really complex solutions. And that's what my profession is built upon. Yeah. And, I hang my hat on that. And so, of course, there's a natural reluctance there. And, the shift, that you've seen is it started with the end users. The end users started to say, yeah, but that story that Ilya is talking about, that resonates with me. AV integrators saying, yeah, no, that's not going to cut it. Yeah, but excuses of why not. But the end users saying that story has resonance. And where I think I found sort of my sweet spot is coming in and saying, let's not discount that. Let's not discount that, the complex path. And let's really talk about what you're trying to achieve. And for a lot of spaces, the simple MTR room is the perfect solution. And especially that's evolved over the last 2 or 3 years here as we have, really there's a form factor between Android and Windows, between all the OEM devices that are now certified. There's a form factor for an awful lot of solutions.
Yeah, what you can do now is a hell of a lot more than where we started with all the extensibility and the DSPs and the ceiling tiles. Like you can go a long way now, particularly on the Windows, but increasingly on the Android as well.
Exactly. And so it's one I've never gotten too hung up on. We can't do it today when you can see the vision of, there will be an OEM that comes along that can do this. And so, where I've always been is I want to try to balance. I don't want to build the machine that's going to come real quick and replace this because that just becomes wasted effort and, sort of sunk cost that you'll never get back. But at the same time, I don't want to be flat-footed and say, we're just going to wait. And so again, having those conversations with our customers as an integrator, around, what are you trying to achieve? What is what's the real important functions of this room? Not from a technology feature standpoint, but what are you doing? Are you coming in here and doing financial reviews? Are you actually doing sales presentations? Are you, demonstrating your products? Because if you're demonstrating a products, the color of this, I hold this up and this camera's reflecting this is almost black. Well, no, it's like a slate gray. And so that really matters. And so, okay, well, that can dictate then how we actually solve the problem rather than starting with, here's a pile of, here's a kit and does this meet your needs or not? Well, that's a way to sell, but we've been much more productive, or having value conversations with our customer, meeting them where they are, and in doing so, it's helped me and the firms I've worked with, reduce our reluctance to this being a tool in the toolkit, but also not being saying it's the only tool in the toolkit.
And how's it been like? I mean, obviously a big part of this, and not just Microsoft, but like Cisco and Zoom, like it's all kind of like getting simpler and getting more pluggable, more playable. That AV integrator conversation, is it, as you said now, is it more about advising the customer and like picking from the portfolio and the right use case for the right kit? So
I find a lot of our discussions with customers, and this doesn't have to be huge organizations, is much more around helping them get to the right standard. It's, because we're talking about UC in more spaces. It's partly the BYOD discussion and why that discussion is so valuable, regardless whether BYOD is the actual solution we settle on or not. It's that idea of, both cost coming down, complexity coming down, and need from the user base coming up. It's okay, what's the organization's strategy around UC? And in that, as an integrator, we still bring value. And, and I think we prove it every day. It's not a foregone conclusion. It's not something you can take for granted, I believe. But I think there's a lot around that. It is around the strategy of AI. And how do we enable workplaces to take advantage of the right AI tools for their workforce, the tools that their workforce expects and that they have at the desktop? That's becoming increasingly part of the discussion. And so, I look at the role, Avixa as an organization in the AV space has, rebranded itself to the audio video experience, integrated experience organization a few years back. And I almost look at it as we're finally starting to step into that role of talking about real experience, not just experience touching buttons on a touch panel on the table. And I think that's really important. That's really good. I'm glad we're getting there. I think there's a lot of room to go, and there's a lot more considerations, when we talk about experience in there, that as an industry, the AV industry has an opportunity to really show value in, whether it's acoustics or just, you think about, you walk into the glass, fishbowl room, how drained do you feel after a 6-hour meeting in there? Because the acoustics are sound is bouncing around so many hard spaces. It takes a toll on you. And so, from a human standpoint, there's opportunity for us to come in and talk about the value of, treating your wall surfaces. And that gets into uncomfortable space for a lot of people who have traditional AV backgrounds like myself even. But again, back to your thing earlier about sort of continually pushing yourself to new endeavors, new opportunities. I think there's a lot of opportunity for those in the AV space that choose to embrace that too.
With the AI thing, I mean, I'm seeing even Microsoft, like IT focused partners, not quite getting their head around what that role is inside of their org and where do they bring value to customers. So what are you doing day to day with customers in the AI conversation? Is it AI as in like AI in the MTR, AI in cameras, AI in the workplace? How's that come together?
Well, I think the first bit is a lot of discussions on that exact bit right there, because when you break it down, there's device level AI, and frankly, I look at those as more feature enablement. I don't get hung up on the word AI in those too much because it almost comes across as a marketing buzz sometimes, where I just want to slap AI and I've got the new version of my product. Well, we've been doing AI in UC for 30 years. Echo canceling is effectively a version of machine learning AI, however you want to classify there. And so AI is not new. Where I really look at it is on the, from an organizational level, there's the personal skilling and the personal tools and the personal side of leveraging AI in my role to be more effective, to do more, to do it at a higher quality. And then there's the organizational level of how does organizations incorporate it, whether it's enabling people without needing to know how to prompt engineer, as an example, but still get the value from it. And so like I'm working right now on, drafting things like a statement of work based on everything we know about a customer's engagement. Well, tee up a first draft of the statement of work with the touch of a button, instead of needing to teach all of our design engineers and design consultants how to use prompt engineering effectively and consistently.
Yeah, so like as an agent workflow type scenarios like this.
Exactly.
This is all the previous proposals with the customer. This is our format. This is the project.
Exactly. Those repeatable things that you can build an agent around. And so, when we're talking with our customers, a lot of our discussions are, okay, from a personal level, what is the expectation of your user today, and what do we collectively see as a vision of the future? And that's different for every organization. Some organizations are still very risk adverse, and they're approaching AI adoption from default no, default deny, and let's build exceptions into it. The more progressive organizations are really opening up and saying, let's be open to thinking new ways. Let's be open to dreaming bigger, but then still focus on compliance, focus on risk mitigation and data security at a heavy level before we roll to production. But how do we pilot? And then, so there's that personal side. And then there's the organization side of, okay, well, what systems are important to you? What, if we're talking, even just in the Teams space, meeting transcription. Well, if we unlock meeting transcription for a certain set of your user base, how does that help your organization move forward? And once they buy in on that, there's that value. Okay, how do we now help enable your workspaces to support that vision? And again, as an integrator, I look at it, we're doing the same thing. We're just integrating with the software layer much more than we are at the hardware level. We're not worried about converting this cable to that connector. We're talking about how do we get data from my voice into a microphone, into the platform that they need, back out through speakers, back out to the room, and doing it effectively so that everyone in a room can be heard, everyone can be picked up, the camera can actually recognize everyone so that it can do the face recognition comparison and attribute it that Dave's speaking versus Tom's speaking. Yep. So we have a lot of conversations around that. And then we have some customers where they're going on a journey of building out a chatbot for their employees, and they want to add AV expertise into that. We're going into, on the content creation side, customers who are looking to leverage AI to help them bring to life the technical solutions that we've sold them over the years. And they're looking at, how do I get more creative or, quicker to having content for my digital signage, less technical skill required to get content for digital signage, things like that. And so, there's a lot of strategy discussions we're having too with the customers that are ready to dream bigger, but again, don't know how to get from here to there. That's the value an integrator has always brought. And those are, some of the areas that we're talking about, on a regular basis with our customers.
That's awesome to get that perspective. I've been saying it's nice to hear some of this, because it feels like AV have got such a big opportunity to widen the conversation beyond how many rooms, how many bars, how many screens, what format, into your organization is on this AI journey. Let us talk to you about it. And because Teams is so prevalent, and I'm sure the other UC platforms are doing AI things as well, I see meeting transcription, recap, Copilot in meetings being the number one first workload, because everyone has the problem with too many meetings. Everybody wants summary. And once you're there, if Teams is at the center of the AI conversation, naturally that rooms conversation is, oh, well, how are you going to have the same type, as you said, the exactly. Person identification, the transcription in the room? And I think we're just on the cusp of, give it a little bit longer and it'll be like, well, that's an expectation. Obviously, when I go into a meeting, it knows who I am and it takes the transcription.
No, and I totally expect that. And then it will become, okay, now how do I have an agent go the next step? How do I have an agent actually listen in on the meeting, and beyond just taking notes, beyond recording action items, how do I have an agent, report attendance? And, report back to those who weren't in there with something different. And, I think organizations are going to look at, some of that's going to be a build, some of that's going to be encourage the platforms to incorporate it in their solution. But to me, that's where, I'm really excited for the next, I won't even go 12 months, hell, the next few months. This pace is so crazy, but it's awesome too. That, there's something new every day, and it's just, I love it.
It's interesting timing, isn't it? Because the premise of kind of computer-based, be it Android or Windows-based rooms, is that you can software update them and innovate. Obviously, at the start of that journey, no one knew the AI thing was going to come as quick or as fast, but now it has. It's like all this kit you invested in, suddenly it can do this, intelligent meeting transcription. It can do these new camera smarts. It can do all these things because they're updatable through their life cycle.
Well, and that's, I've seen, our end users changing the way that they look at refresh cycles on technology, because it used to be you pick, are you on, a 3-year, a 5-year, a 7-year refresh cycle? And at the end of that period, you would come in and take everything out and dispose of it. And you'd bring all new equipment in purely to upgrade the features.
Yeah.
And, yes, you'd get a little crisper picture or a brighter display or some better sound, but it was really because the technology had advanced and the chips on the box couldn't be changed. To your point now, there's MTRs out there that are, 3, 4, 5 years old that have AI capabilities long before we were talking AI. And that to me is awesome. I think, from a pure sustainability standpoint, it's one of those things that most people value it, but they're not willing to, it's not the key decision maker, their decision point, in my opinion, but it's awesome to see from that standpoint. We can gain on initiatives like that purely because the software-centric nature of our entire world allows us to keep innovating with the hardware we have, with the investment we have, so we can prolong it.
Yeah. It's super interesting as well. I wouldn't have thought of things like you going in and advising on using AI for content creation because of the media elements or the content creation of digital signage. But it makes perfect sense. Like, you're in that conversation. And again, it's a great way to come in and add some value in a different conversation, to be like, you invested in all this digital signage. Like, who is sometimes it's, there's 2 comms people internally who are turning the content for that. So you've got all the capability, but how do you keep that at a high bar? AI is a perfect thing for that.
I mean, everyone sees the brochure, the glossy sales brochure that shows really professionally created content on digital signage. And then how many times do you walk around a corporate space and it's this white screen with text that says, "Welcome, Tom," or it's a PowerPoint, or it's an Excel. And it's like, that's nothing wrong with that. It functionally, it gets you there, but the AI enables the novice user to do so much more there. And so, again, it is things like that AI it's that superpower mentality. It's not replacing anyone, but it really is giving superpowers, to those, and giving new opportunities to those who you never would have dreamed having it.
That's awesome. Well, Dave, thanks so much for jumping on the pod, and thanks for all the prompt of the week. It's definitely a regular watch for me, and you've got quite an archive now of different prompts. I feel like you used to do like a mega mix at some point of the top ones.
Seriously, well, I was thinking, there's some things like the prompt. I've almost been tempted to not do prompts and start talking about, like, here's the top 3, ways to approach this idea or something. So
yeah, AI use case of the week, maybe.
Use cases, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But it's fun. And we were talking, before about, it keeps me on my toes. Because there's always new things. The prompt of the week is pretty much focused on Copilot, but that doesn't mean I'm not following every other AI tool, because each one pushes the other. Yeah. And, it's not always the most flashy or biggest thing that is actually the most use. And so, making sure that we all just, continually 1% better ourselves, is really important to me. I focus on it with my team and with the CTI team. But again, as a community, I really view it as, the rising tide, rises all ships. And, we're all on this learning journey together. None of us are experts. And so, I look at it as an opportunity to give back, to spread the knowledge. And, I learn from others as I'm just researching what's the next prompt I'm going to talk about. So it's fun all around.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thanks for jumping on the pod, and we'll catch up at the next event soon, no doubt.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Tom.